Hi, it's a pleasure to be here with you today in this Chatbot Africa event. We are going to discuss a very interesting topic, very intriguing, and generally very relevant to today's industry, which is the impact of deep learning-based chatbots introducing employee attrition. Now, let's go into detail into it. We don't have much time in hand, and it's a very vast topic, technically as well as conceptually. So let's run through it in detail as much as we can, and of course, let's examine all the parts within the same. And if you have any doubts, of course, please feel free to connect with me offline on LinkedIn or otherwise. Firstly, let's look at what exactly is the introduction to AI in HR. How can artificial intelligence impact the field of human resources? Well, on the one hand, it can certainly solve business problems, which is ultimately the main purpose of it. Then it will move into developing new skills and attracting new talent, which is what we're going to discuss right after this slide. Then it will move into employee experiences, and lastly, obviously, will be the improvement of analytical tools as well as budgeting within the HR department, which is something very critical and, of course, very significant in the short as well as the long term. Now, if we look at talent acquisition, role suggestion, and AI, here we have multiple dimensions which we have to cover. Let's look at some examples. AI can be used in AI-driven assistance, the assessments. There are some companies like P&G and Nestle which utilize these tools, AI-induced video interviews, in order to interview and filter candidates at first. Now, for each question, there will be an answer that is expected, and if it's a different answer, a different question will come across, and so on and so forth. That is how the system operates. So the algorithm learns from experience, a reinforcement learning-based mechanism, which of course can be improved utilizing various programming languages like Python or otherwise. Another tool is social discovery. Here we will utilize neural networks of various kinds. Without getting very technical, mainly we will be using CNN as well as RNN. If we combine it with GNN, generative artificial neural networks, here we are going to work across a spectrum of social media platforms, which is LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and filter across the profiles, the likes, the shares, and the comments of the candidates, and be able to understand what kind of profile they have and how they are as individuals, and whether it matches their actual professional requirements that we have or not. Accordingly, we will be able to draw across a line and recruit dedicated candidates for the positions that we have in place, matching, of course, their social media platform profiles. Now, there is a huge question here about ethics and privacy, which we need to address, which is still not addressed in the real world, but nevertheless, we will work across that ethics and privacy compound later on, and obviously this is a huge area of discussion that we can go on, but ultimately we don't have the required time today, unfortunately, to discuss about it, but certainly ethics and AI is a very critical area which we need to know, and we need to discuss in detail in order to assess the HR component of AI in this case. Nevertheless, social media discovery is one aspect. Then will be voice analysis. If you utilize voice recognition tools during video interviews, you will be able to analyze the voice of the candidate based on the pitch, the tonality, the intensity, as well as the overall perception and the responses of the candidate in base of what, if it matches the responses which have been predetermined. This will set us a parameter on voice analysis, which is going to be combined with facial analysis and along the way also with sentiment analysis. Now, when it comes to sentiment analysis, here we are going to analyze two main factors. One is polarity and the other one is subjectivity. When it comes to polarity, we will be analyzing whether it's positive, neutral, or negative. And when it comes to subjectivity, we analyze whether it's an opinion or a fact. This can be done with feedbacks as well as voice interviews or even written reviews for that matter. For example, like this that you can see on your screen right now. We will filter out the words in positive, negative, and neutrality, as well as with various compounds depending on the structure of the sentence and depending on the formation of how the sentence has been built up. And obviously this depends upon whether we are using exclamations or not, and whether we are using capital letters or not, and whether we are emphasizing certain words or not. And this is how the process goes across. Now, if you look at candidate employee engagement, this is a very interesting topic because we are dealing with something that I personally named deep learning enabled chatbots. or what is also called as a 24/7 chatbot, which is a deep learning induced algorithm, which is activated 24/7 and is utilized to answer employees as well as candidate queries in regards to, let's say, payroll, position of the company, any documentation which might require, assessments, even if some employees might be underpaid or not. This will all help in this regard in order to be able to predict how the employee engagement will end up at the end of the day, and this will ensure that employees will remain satisfied with the services provided by the HR department, as well as candidates who will be in touch with the company constantly. What are the outcomes expected from this? Well, obviously there's going to be a much better communication flow, acceleration of various services within the company, skill set development is going to be much faster and much faster rate, and more, obviously, consequently, more opportunities and more productivity. If we look at some cases, we have Google, IBM, the Intel and Microsoft software world, which utilizes these tools on a daily basis, and they have declared positive results generally. Obviously, some cons are always there, especially on the bias and lack of cognitive ability side, because ultimately, if you're not dealing with a human factor, obviously there's going to be a cognitive lack and a bias lag behind the scenes, which is obviously going to take place. On the other hand, if you talk about engagement and retention, which are two different areas but very parallel and connected to each other, and if you talk about the machine learning tools for that, here we'll be discussing on various aspects. One will be the KPI side of employee, the other will be the attrition side of the company, another one will be the recruitment campaign for the company side, and then matching the employees' expectations as well as the company's mission, vision and values. So all these elements will come into the picture when it comes to analysis of engagement and retention of employees from a company perspective, will directly lead to career development. Now, how do you ensure an adequate and fast progress in the career development side for each employee? Well, firstly, you utilize gamification, which is combined with social media analysis, and this is helping us in order to not just predict future job roles and opportunities, but also the future desired skills that we may have. For example, team formation. Now, if you look at team formation, it will help us understanding what role each employee should have, what team each employee should go to based on that role, and what will be a winning prediction model as well. This is all based across on the career development of each employee. That means if an employee needs to fill certain skill gaps of their own, but not all the skill gaps that other employees might need, then we won't train all the employees in everything. We will train certain employees in certain tasks only, and the system will tell us what task in particular an employee needs to be trained on, and we'll also identify certain courses online or offline for the same certain trainers. For team formation, there is a tool by IBM and MIT which has been developed called Team Opportunity Builder, which is used in this regard. Now, this recommends you determines the best opportunity for each role and best candidate. It recommends which candidates should go into each team, and then ultimately predicts what is the impact of that team in the overall purpose of the service and the development, and how can it really impact in the short or long run. When it comes to attrition, it's something very interesting. Attrition runs around the concept of appraisal as well as the concept of compensation. Now, if you look at attrition, we are talking about measuring various aspects, such as the ones you can see on your screen, which of course can be expanded, and I will show you now shortly a dataset sample, but can be easily expanded into other dimensions of data. And we have to keep in mind one thing: psychology plays a very fundamental role in the use of AI in human resources, because ultimately psychology has been and will always be the origin of AI, and not programming language as it is widely claimed, but human psychology and cognitive abilities. So ultimately this combination is deadly, and it can really make a difference in the long run of HR and HR services. Now, if you see your screen, you have some examples of the dataset where each company has been provided for. Just take a look. You can notice that there are multiple parameters, such as whether the person is married, how many years of experience, the gender, whether the person is involved in X number of jobs, each department, whether the person has X monthly income or not, how much time it takes to travel to the office, and so on. This helps us predicting attrition utilizing various tools such as support vector machine, random forest, and logistic regression, and we get an output like the one you can see on your screen. There are many sample datasets on GitHub and Stack Overflow, so you can practice this on your own without any problem. And you can see it gives us a percentage basis on what exact part of the company each employee will have a difficulty on, and what can increase attrition for that particular employee also. Now you may be thinking, what are the cons of utilizing these particular tools? Well, on the one hand, there is employee burnout. Obviously, this will lead to distress and anxiety, and lastly, the company will also become extremely dependent on technology, which is never good, by the way. And then the concept which arises, which is what we discussed earlier, is privacy as well as ethics. When it comes to privacy concern, I have many questions which I would like the audience to answer. You can ask them to me offline as well, maybe later on, in terms of LinkedIn or so on. One is, who can ensure the data is not biased or being manipulated? The other will be, who is the regulatory body for this? There is no regulatory body for AI at the moment. Who oversees the data collection process? And if it's not a human, will it going to be biased also? And then, how far is too far? I would like you to answer these questions, of course. Whenever you like, offline, you can connect with me, and if you have answers for this, it would be wonderful to have a discussion over the same. And lastly, what I would like to discuss is control versus privacy. Which one is going to win? Well, if you establish control in the company, you can of course ensure profitability over the long run and 24/7 control, as well as a constant monitoring on the quality processes. However, if you embrace privacy, then obviously it protects the freedom of speech and encourages innovations, and employees will feel more comfortable overall, as well as increasing their psychological well-being. However, there are cons to all of it. Obviously, control versus privacy, they are going to contradict each other, and all of this leads us to ethical concerns, which are some of these. One is job loss automation. Another one will be obviously the bias in all of this inception code, the algorithm. Then, what if deep learning actually goes rogue and develops some sanctioning methods, which is very dangerous? And lastly, something which has been widely portrayed by Hollywood, which is singularity. What if AI reaches a stage of cognitive ability beyond human spectrum, and then we have really a problem for good? So these aspects is something I would like you to answer, and something I would like you to look upon. And of course, we can have a discussion offline whenever you like. It's been my pleasure to be here with you today. I have really enjoyed speaking to you, and of course, being in this platform is always a pleasure for me. Among this audience and supporting the field of AI and emerging technologies. Thank you so much.